All right, it is 2 o'clock, so I think we probably should get going with this session. As the title of this session shows, you know, we put together a session here about addressing energy sector issues, cybersecurity issues and challenges. And that's not helping, but okay. And my name's Sid Snitkin, if you didn't see me in the earlier one today. And I'm actually playing Sid Snitkin this time, not Eric Kosman. So what I want to do here is just give a short presentation just to kind of frame the issues that I would like to see us discuss here. Then we're going to have a couple speakers, and then we're going to have some other people join the panel, and we'll have a panel discussion. You know, this is a picture I've seen of the power distribution networks in the country. We'll just say in the country, but it could be the same in the world. And, you know, in the middle you have the generation and transmission, and then the high voltage distribution, medium voltage, low voltage, and so on. It's just a nice picture because it kind of goes out that way. And what we know and what everybody talks about, and I've heard people saying, oh, this is the Newark SIP section or session. But, you know, if you look at Newark SIP, we're only talking about that. And in the past, and that's not a very important issue or a big issue. Can you hear me all right, by the way? Now can you hear me better? I suspect. I apologize. It's not that what's in Newark SIP isn't important. It's obviously very important, but there's a lot of other issues as well today. And we thought we wanted to broaden this because the DER stuff is becoming very important. So what I want to talk about today and what we're going to be talking about today is all of that. And if you compare those two scenarios, this is another slide with another kind of view of that, but I like it because when we talk about the top would be from the inside out, so from top to bottom. You know, on the inside we have all types of generation facilities, hydro, pumped, you know, gas, coal, nuclear, wind, utilities, and so on, that are generation systems. They go through a transmission system. In the transmission area, one reason I wanted this slide was you also have a lot of other players. I mean, you have the companies that are generating, but you also have the ISO to worry about. You also have, when you get down into the distribution end, you have distribution services operators. And now you also have a lot of other issues there. Microgrids, fuel cells, people having solar systems that are selling energy back. So it's a very, very conflicting issue. And if you contrast them, on the top, there's thousands of power plants and lines and substations in our country. If you look at the bottom, there's millions of the distribution things. If you look at the top, you have well-defined kind of stable use issues, at least, and you have Newark SIP regulations. At the bottom, when I say use cases, I mean, we understand power plants, we understand how transmission is done. If you look at the bottom, you have lots of use cases just emerging. It's like lots of new technology, lots of new ideas. What am I going to do with it? How am I going to connect and things like that? So the top is probably more amenable to standards than the bottom. But the important thing is we have nothing really on the bottom, and it's a big major part of the systems these days. If you compare the bulk energy system versus the DER side, I just had some issues there from the point of view of the cyber risks. Bulk energy supply, you know, there's a low likelihood that a plant will be attacked, but if it does, it's going to have an enormous impact. We all know that. Particularly if it's the power systems. Like in the Ukraine with this, there was a big thing, you know, I'm sure everyone's aware of the second Ukraine attack. And the first one was on power plants. This latest one was on the high voltage substations. So now people are getting very concerned because of the impact of that. It wasn't as bad, but it was another issue. Where if you look at distribution, there's probably actually a higher likelihood that you're going to see an attack because there's just so much stuff out there, as well as the level of security is not as well done. The technologies that's used and the practices aren't as good. But the impact is going to be a lot less. If you look at the attackers, you know, I think the bulk energy system, people are mostly concerned about nation states, terrorists, hacktivists. I don't know about hacktivists as much, but certainly nation states and terrorists. On the right, you're going to have more hacktivists. You might have insiders. You could have cyber criminals. You could have lots of things attack it. If you look at cybersecurity situations, as I think I mentioned already, most plants already have invested in defensive things. You know, someone made the comment this morning, and I think it's particularly true in the power industry. Plants are protected. I mean, you're mandated because of Newark SIP, but a lot of people today have invested in at least defensive technologies, basic level ones. If you look at the distribution side, the DER side, you know, some may have it, some may not. There's no regulations. There's a lot of new things coming out, a lot of new products. It's almost, I don't want to make it the same as the IoT issue, but it's in that realm where people are building things without security as a key issue. And then if you look at the challenges, what I see as the challenge for the bulk energy systems is really ensuring the cybersecurity effectiveness of NERC SIP. We have standards. The question is, how do we make those standards effective, and how do we know that they're effective? If you look at the distribution side, the issue is more, there are no standards. What are we going to do? What's needed to be done, and things like that. Now, here's some questions. I'm sorry it's so much text, but you know, what I hear as an analyst, and when I talk to power companies, and I talk to suppliers who service power companies as well, you know, my research suggests that most power industry professionals, you know, they appreciate the need for regulated, they appreciate the need for NERC SIP and regulations, but many of them are very frustrated because they're frustrated in that they don't see how this is really generating much value for them. I mean, they understand the security side, but the amount of effort that's taken for compliance, they worry about that it's drawing so much emphasis on that they're really losing the security of their plants. So one of the questions that have come up, and these are things I'm just throwing them out right now. Hopefully maybe we want to discuss them with the panels, but the kind of questions I have as an analyst is, first of all, I think there may be some benefits from NERC SIP compliance and things that maybe people aren't evaluating or considering. You know, you're mandated, you have to do something, and you do it because you have to do it. And you only see the only benefit is I'm getting a lot of data to give to somebody. But there may be other benefits that are there that people may be overlooking that you could take advantage of that compliance effort to generate those benefits. As well as this issue of resources being diverted because of compliance away from security. So I think one of the big issues is, are there ways for NERC to achieve the NERC compliance goals in a more efficient way, so that it doesn't drain so much of the resources. And one of the things I know is in version 5 and 6, I think it's in version 5, it's shifted to more of a risk-based approach. And I guess part of the question is, does this really solve the problem for a lot of people? I think at the moment it's causing more problems because of having to define what is a high risk, medium, and low risk area. But in the long run, is that going to really help? And these are questions about NERC SIP. I think there's a question if regulators should be doing more about integrating cyber and physical security. You know, we've seen some attacks that have really been attacks on remote stations that really were a combination of physical and cyber, and you can't separate the two. One of the big issues, and we see this in all of our industries that we cover, is this issue of legacy systems. Certainly the power industry has that as much as anybody else. I don't know if it's more, but just as much. So, you know, one of the issues is a big complaint has always been, well, these are insecure by design devices. One way to make them secure is to insist in something in the regulations to force people to migrate to more secure. I think that's a major, major thing, but I don't know if that would help, or if they should be doing that. That was the one I just said. Oh, and then the bottom one from an NERC SIP perspective. Now that things are being connected more, I mean, if you think of the circle I had, you got the inner part that's all NERC SIP, which was controlled, and now you're connecting it all with the outer stuff. You know, we have this one massively connected thing. As we all know in the power industry, you have to be massively connected. And are you really concerned? Is that a concern about back entry into the power systems through that type of networks? And if that is true, then do we need NERC and other regulatory agencies to do something to mandate what needs to be done from that perspective, okay? Those are issues I see for the NERC side. On the distribution side, you know, we have this issue, I think, if you look at all the developments, and you all probably know it better than I do, but if you look at all the developments in distributed energy, in microgrids and IoT devices and things like that, they're all being driven for good reasons. I mean, there's a lot of innovative design going on with a lot of innovation for good purposes. And if we try to regulate that too much, will we be causing a problem that will stunt innovation? We can't afford to stunt the innovation with too many regulations, but on the other hand, we can't let the innovation go on its own without the protection, or we'll see exactly what we're seeing in the IoT world. And then again, just this question about, I don't know, and I just would love to get the opinions of people, if this lack of regulations at the distribution level, is that a major risk are we facing there? Is it something we need to really worry about? Or is it something that shouldn't be regulated and we should just let it alone? And finally, well, that was the last thing. I think the other one is the same thing about the design, more secure by design devices. Okay, with that said, that's all I wanted to say, and I was framing the issue. As you can see, there are lots of issues, and I'm awfully wordy in the way I phrase issues, so it was a lot of reading there. But what we have today, so those are the kind of issues I'm hoping that will come out. I'm not framing those necessarily as the questions, but those are issues, I think. And today what we have is speakers. We're going to have two speakers here. One is Alan Farmer, who's with Burns and McDonnell. And Alan's going to come up and talk from a Newark SIP perspective primarily. And then following that, we're going to have Stuart Madnick, who's a professor at MIT, and he's going to come up, and I believe Stuart's presentation is probably more around the distributed energy resources and what's coming after that, coming from that. After that, then we'll have Jay Cribb and John Maloney join us on the panel, and then we will open the floor to all the questions you want, and so that's all I have to say. Alan, would you like to join us up here?